When my granddaughter Ava offered to move my jewelry into storage during my bathroom renovation, I thought she was being thoughtful. She wrapped each box in tissue paper and promised nothing would leave her hands until my house was safe again. Among those pieces was a small gold locket William gave me on our 20th anniversary. Inside was the only photograph I had of us holding our newborn daughter outside the old Willow Creek Hospital. 3 weeks later, an estate appraiser called and asked whether I was Rebecca Clark. He said he had seen my name engraved inside a locket that had been brought into his shop for valuation. At first, I thought it had been stolen. Then he sent me a photograph. The locket was mine. The tiny scratch near the clasp was exactly where William had dropped it on our porch steps 40 years earlier, and attached to the appraisal request was a seller's name I knew better than my own. Ava's. But the appraiser had also found something tucked behind the photograph inside the locket. Something my granddaughter had clearly never known was there. Subscribe for more family justice stories where the truth survives, and tell me, what heirloom would you never trust anyone else to store? For several minutes after I ended that call, I sat at my kitchen table, with my hand pressed flat against the polished wood. William had refinished himself. The house was quiet except for the hum of the temporary fan drying the plaster near the hallway bathroom. Dust cloths covered the furniture in my living room. The air smelled faintly of paint, old wood, and that sharp chemical scent contractors always seem to bring with them. I looked at the photograph Mr. Ellison had texted me. It was not a perfect picture. The light in his shop had reflected off the gold, and the locket was resting on a black velvet square beneath a magnifying lamp. But I did not need a perfect picture. I knew that locket. I knew the tiny dent near the clasp. I knew the faint, almost invisible groove where my thumbnail had opened it thousands of times. I knew the engraving inside the rim. To Rebecca, 20 years, still my best decision. Love, William. My husband had never been a man who made speeches. He showed love in practical things. He changed the oil in my car before I remembered it needed changing. He brought home cinnamon rolls when I had a hard week at the library. He kept a small notebook in his shirt pocket where he wrote down things I mentioned wanting, even when I had forgotten I mentioned them. That locket had been his one grand surprise. He gave it to me at a little restaurant outside Columbus on our 20th anniversary. We did not have much money then. We had a mortgage, a daughter in college, and an old furnace that made a sound like it was arguing with the winter. But William had saved for it anyway. You always carry everybody else close to your heart, he told me that night. I thought you deserved something that reminded you that you're carried too. I wore it nearly every day for 25 years. After he died, I could not bring myself to wear it as often. Some mornings, it felt too heavy. Not because of the gold, because of everything's inside it. The picture of us holding our daughter, Laura, outside Willow Creek Hospital. My hair was darker then. William looked exhausted and proud, like he had just been handed a miracle and was afraid to blink. Laura was wrapped in a yellow blanket my mother had sewn by hand. It was the only copy of that picture I had. The original negative had disappeared decades ago after a basement leak ruined a box of family photographs. Every other image from that day had become a cloudy, water-stained memory. But the locket kept one small version safe. Or at least, I had believed it did. I called Mr. Ellison back before I had time to let fear turn into something softer and easier to excuse. Mr. Ellison, I said, I need you to tell me exactly what you found. His voice was careful, not cold, but professional. Mrs. Clark, I want to be respectful of your family situation. The young woman who brought the piece in did not say it belonged to someone else. She said it had been passed down to her. She said I gave it to her? She said it was a family heirloom she was considering selling. The word selling landed in my chest like a stone. I looked toward the hallway, where Ava had stood 3 weeks earlier with the plastic storage bins lined up against the wall. At the time, she had looked so sincere. Grandma, you don't need to worry about any of this, she had said. The contractor says there could be moisture everywhere. Let me take the jewelry somewhere safe until the tile work is done. I had hesitated, not because I suspected her. I had never suspected Ava of anything serious, but I had spent enough years handling library archives to understand that once something sentimental left your hands, it became easier for the world to misplace it. She had noticed my hesitation and smiled. "I can make an inventory list," she said. "I'll photograph every piece. You can check it whenever you want." That had sounded responsible. Almost too responsible, I realized now. At the time, I had thanked her. I had even apologized for being particular. "You don't have to apologize," Ava told me. "I know how much these things mean to you." Now I wondered whether she had known exactly how much they meant. Mr. Ellison cleared his throat softly on the other end of the line. "There is another matter," he said. "The reason I called you, instead of simply completing the appraisal." "What was it?" When I opened the locket to inspect the hinges, I noticed the photograph was sitting slightly forward. There was a thin piece of paper tucked behind it. My fingers tightened around my phone. "What kind of paper?" "I haven't unfolded it. I thought it might be private, but I could see handwriting through the fold. Your name appears to be on it." I could not speak for a moment. William had been gone for 6 years. 6 years, and there were still corners of my life where I expected to find him waiting. A sweater at the back of the closet. A note in the garage drawer. The old blue coffee mug he insisted tasted better than the newer ones. But I had never known there was anything behind that photograph. "Would you read it to me?" I asked. "I'd rather not do that over the phone," he said. "Not until I can confirm you are the owner and speak with you in person. I can hold the locket in my safe. I have also told the seller that the valuation needs additional review." "Did you tell her why?" "No. I said I needed to verify the provenance of the item." A small, painful part of me felt relieved by that. Not because Ava deserved protection from consequences. Not if she had done what it appeared she had done. But because I still hoped I had misunderstood. Ava had been 9 years old when William taught her how to plant tomatoes in the garden. She used to come over after school with her backpack half open and her hair coming loose from its braids. She would sit at my counter, eat apple slices, and tell me every detail of whatever had upset her that day. When she was 12, she broke a lamp in my living room while practicing a dance routine. She cried so hard I had to sit her down and explain that lamps could be replaced. "People matter more than things," I told her. She remembered that sentence for years. After William's funeral, Ava had hugged me in the church hallway and whispered, "I'll help take care of you, Grandma." I believed she meant it. I still wanted to believe it. But belief was not evidence. That was something I had learned during my years at the library. People often thought my job had been about shelving books. It was not. It was about keeping records in their proper order. It was about noticing when something had been moved, altered, mislabeled, or quietly removed. Sometimes a missing page told more truth than an entire folder. "I'm coming to your shop," I told Mr. Ellison. "Mrs. Clark, I would advise you not to confront anyone before you know more." "I don't intend to." "Good. Bring identification if you can. And if you have any photographs of yourself wearing the locket, or records showing it belonged to you, that would help." "I do. I had a photograph in the top drawer of my bedroom desk. It was from Laura's wedding. William and I were standing near the cake, both looking tired and happy. The locket was visible against my blue dress. I also had the old jewelry insurance writer William and I updated every few years. He used to tease me about it. "Rebecca, someday someone will think we're Rockefeller heirs." "No," I would tell him. "Someday someone may need proof." After we ended the call, I went to my desk. The drawer stuck the way it always had when the weather was humid. I pulled gently, then harder, until it gave with a soft scrape. Inside were rubber bands, old birthday cards, 2 fountain pens that no longer worked, and a folder labeled Home Wreckers. I opened it on the kitchen table. The insurance writer was there. So was a list I had made after William died, cataloging the things I wanted Laura to have someday and the things I hoped would stay in the family. The locket was listed in my handwriting. Gold oval locket. Engraved. William anniversary gift. Not for sale. I stared at those last 3 words. Not for sale. Ava had not just taken a piece of jewelry. If the appraisal request was genuine, she had made a decision about something that was not hers, then carried it into a shop and put a price on it. I heard the front door open. For one wild second, I thought it might be Ava. Instead, it was my daughter, Laura. She came in carrying a paper grocery bag and called, "Mom, I brought soup. You sounded tired when I talked to you this morning." Laura had always entered my house like she belonged there. because she did. At 46, she had her father's patient eyes and my habit of making lists for things that did not need lists. She stopped when she saw the papers spread across the table. What happened? I looked at her face and felt the old instinct rise in me. Protect your child, even when she is grown, even when the pain belongs to her too. Sit down, I said. She did not move. Mom, a man named Peter Ellison called me. He owns an estate appraisal shop in Dayton. Laura's expression changed slowly. Why would an appraiser call you? Because Ava brought him my locket. The grocery bag slipped from her hand and landed softly against the chair. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the fan in the hallway. Laura looked at me as though I had spoken another language. My locket? I continued. Your father's anniversary gift, the one with the hospital picture. No, she said immediately. It was not anger, not yet. It was denial so quick and sharp that it almost made me hurt for her. Ava wouldn't do that. I want to believe that. She might have taken it by mistake. To an estate appraiser? Laura blinked. Her face went pale. She told me she was helping you pack, she said. She said she made an inventory. She did. Then there has to be an inventory list. I looked around the kitchen. Ava had never given me one. At the time, she had said she would email it once she finished arranging the bins at the storage facility. I had not pressed her. The renovation had made my home feel upside down, and I had been grateful not to think about jewelry boxes and family keepsakes while men in work boots walked through my hallway. I never received it, I said. Laura pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. Her hands were trembling. She's been under stress, she said, though I could hear how weak the explanation sounded even to her. Her rent went up, and that job at the salon cut her hours. She told me she was looking for something better. She didn't tell me any of that. She didn't want you to worry. No, I said quietly. Maybe she didn't want me to ask questions. Laura pressed her fingers against her forehead. I had watched mothers struggle with the truth about their children before. At the library, people came in to print court notices, eviction paperwork, bankruptcy forms. They sat at public computers with the same expressions I saw on my daughter now. The look of someone who wanted the facts to change because the facts had touched someone they loved. Mr. Ellison found something inside the locket, I said. Laura looked up. What? A folded note. He has not opened it. From Dad? I don't know. My daughter's eyes filled, and for a second she was 8 years old again, sitting on our porch waiting for William to come home from work. What are you going to do? She asked. I folded the insurance paper and placed it back in the folder. I'm going to Dayton tomorrow morning. I'm going to bring proof that the locket belongs to me. I'm going to see what that note says. And Ava? I'm not calling her tonight. Laura looked startled. Shouldn't we ask her? No, not until I know what I'm asking. I rose slowly from the table and carried the folder to my desk. For years, I had believed that calm was the same thing as keeping peace. If someone I loved was struggling, I softened my questions. If something felt wrong, I waited for a better explanation. But there comes a point when silence does not protect a family. It protects the person who is counting on everyone else to look away. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my navy cardigan and the pearl earrings William had given me on our 10th anniversary. I placed the old wedding photograph, the insurance rider, and my driver's license in a leather folder. Before I left, I stood in the hallway outside the bathroom renovation. The contractors had removed part of the wall near the linen closet. For the first time, I could see the narrow space where Ava had stacked the storage bins before taking them away. On the floor, half hidden beneath a folded drop cloth, was a small square of pale blue tissue paper. I picked it up. It had a handwritten number in black ink, Lot 14, 3 PCS, 1,850 cash, no name, no date. But in the lower corner, there was a tiny gold fleck caught in the crease. And suddenly, the trip to the appraiser was no longer about one locket. It was about finding out how much of my life Ava had already tried to turn into cash. The drive to Dayton took just under an hour, though it felt longer. I kept the radio off. I did not want music telling me how to feel before I knew what was true. Laura had offered to come with me, but I asked her to stay home. Mom, this is my daughter, she said from my kitchen doorway. I know. Then why won't you let me come? Because I had seen the pain in her face when I said Ava's name. Because no matter how old our children get, there are wounds we cannot spare them from. But we can decide whether to make them stand in the room before we know what kind of wound it is. I need to hear this first, I told her. Not as Ava's mother. As the woman those things were taken from. Laura's eyes filled, but she nodded. Call me the moment you know anything. I will. Mr. Ellison's appraisal shop stood between a tailor and a small antique bookstore on a quiet downtown street. The sign above the door read Ellison Estate and Jewelry Appraisals in gold letters that had faded at the edges. Inside, the room smelled like old paper, wood polish, and coffee. Glass cases held watches, brooches, silver serving pieces, and little porcelain figurines that looked too delicate to survive an ordinary family dinner. There were framed certificates along one wall and a heavy steel safe behind the counter. Peter Ellison came out from a back office as soon as I entered. He was a thin man in his early 60s with silver hair and a navy tie. He held out his hand, then seemed to think better of it when he saw my face. Mrs. Clark, he said, I'm sorry we had to meet under these circumstances. So am I. He led me into the office and closed the door. The Locket sat in the center of his desk, resting on the same black velvet square I had seen in the photograph. For a moment, I could not sit down. I simply stood there and looked at it. It was strange how quickly an object can become both familiar and foreign. I had known that locket against my skin for decades. I knew how it felt when the chain caught on the collar of a blouse. I knew its weight when I held it in my palm during difficult moments, yet seeing it under that bright appraisal light made it look like evidence. Not mine. Evidence. Mr. Ellison watched me quietly. Would you like to inspect it before we continue? Yes. He placed a pair of cotton gloves beside it, but I shook my head. I've handled it most of my life. I picked it up with bare fingers. The tiny scratch beside the clasp was there. So was the faint worn spot on the back where the gold had rubbed against buttons and sweaters over the years. I pressed the latch. It opened with the same little click I remembered. The photograph was still inside. William's face was so small behind the cloudy plastic cover that I had to lean closer. There he was, younger than my own daughter was now, holding Laura like she was the most precious thing he had ever touched. My throat tightened. Then Mr. Ellison slid a clear evidence sleeve across the desk. Inside was a folded piece of yellowed paper, no bigger than a business card. This was tucked behind the photograph, he said. I removed it only because it was catching against the hinge. I photographed the placement before I did. He turned a tablet toward me. On the screen was a close-up photograph of the locket opened flat. The small paper had been wedged behind the picture, pressed so tightly against the inner backing that it might have stayed hidden another 40 years. Did you know it was there? He asked. No. I thought that might be the case. I looked at the folded paper. You didn't open it? No, Mom. It seemed personal. And once I saw the engraving and the name on the appraisal request, I wanted to make sure I was dealing with the rightful owner. The phrase rightful owner settled something inside me. It did not make the pain smaller, but it gave it a shape. I want to open it, I said. Of course! My hands were not steady when I lifted the paper from the sleeve. The fold had softened with age. The ink was brown at the edges. I unfolded it slowly, afraid the paper might split beneath my fingers. The message was written in William's unmistakable hand. His letters leaned slightly to the right, and every capital R had a little loop at the bottom because he had learned penmanship from his mother and never lost the habit. Rebecca, if you find this someday, it means I finally remembered to put the important thing where only you would look. The locket belongs to you, not because it is gold, but because I bought it for the woman who taught me what home means. I put a copy of the safe deposit inventory with Mr. Hanley at the bank. I never wanted you to have to explain our choices to anybody who thinks family gives them a claim on what we built. The key is not in the house. Trust the blue book. Love always, William. I read it twice, then a third time. The room was completely silent. Mr. Ellison looked away, giving me the privacy of someone who had seen many families unravel around expensive objects, but understood this was not about money. The blue book, I whispered. You know what he meant? I think so. William had kept a row of old books in the bottom cabinet of his workshop. Most were repair manuals, gardening guides, and one faded atlas he had owned since high school. But there was also a blue leather-bound ledger. He called it his blue book. For years, I assumed it held notes about home repairs, insurance policies, and the retirement account. After he died, I had opened it once. There were pages of numbers, dates, and short notes in his handwriting. I closed it again because I was not ready to see a life reduced to lists. Then, later, I forgot where I had placed it. Or perhaps I only thought I had forgotten. Mr. Ellison spoke gently. "Mrs. Clark, may I ask if you have a safe deposit box?" "William and I did, at First Federal in Willow Creek. You may want to speak with the bank before you tell your granddaughter about this note." "I do," he nodded. "There is one more thing you should know." My eyes moved from William's note to him. When Ava brought the locket in, she had more than one item listed for review. The pale blue tissue paper in my purse suddenly seemed to grow heavier. "Lot 14, I said. Mr. Ellison's face changed. "Yes." I took the tissue paper from my folder and laid it on the desk. "Lot 14, 3 PCS, $1,850 cash." He adjusted his glasses and looked at it closely. "That is not my appraisal notation," he said, "but it resembles a consignment lot label, possibly from an estate buyer or auction coordinator." "Did Ava bring 3 pieces to you?" "No, she brought 4. He opened a folder on his desk. "I don't normally disclose information about a client, but because you have provided identification, an insurance record, and photographs establishing ownership of the locket, I can explain what is in my possession." He turned the folder around. There was a copy of Ava's appraisal request. My name was not anywhere on it. Under owner, she had written, Ava Reynolds. Under source, she had written, inherited from grandmother. The first item listed was the locket. The second was my pearl and sapphire brooch. The third was a gold charm bracelet. The fourth was William's watch. For a moment, I thought I had read the paper wrong. Then I saw the description in Ava's handwriting. Men's 18K gold watch, engraved WC 1968. William's watch. The watch he wore on the day Laura was born. The watch he took off every evening and placed on the small dish beside our bed. After he died, I could not bear to keep it in the bedroom. I wrapped it in a handkerchief and placed it in the cedar jewelry box with the rest of the things I did not know how to live without. I had not even realized Ava took it. "Where is the watch?" I asked. Mr. Ellison's expression became more cautious. "I did not accept it for appraisal." "Why not?" The engraving inside did not match the story she told me. She said it belonged to her late grandfather, but she could not answer basic questions about it. She also seemed very anxious to know what she could get quickly. My chest went cold. "Did you give it back to her?" "Yes." "Did she take the other pieces?" "She took the brooch and bracelet with her as well. She said she wanted to think about the offer." "What offer?" "I offered to purchase the locket only, conditional on verifying ownership. I did not make an offer on the others." "Why the locket?" "Because it had a clear maker's mark, sentimental engraving, and a photograph. It was likely worth more to its owner than to any buyer." I thought she might reconsider. He paused. She did not. I looked at the document again. At the bottom, below Ava's signature, was a date. 2 weeks earlier, the same day Ava had texted me from what she claimed was the storage facility. I remembered the message clearly now. "Everything is safe, Grandma. I've got it handled. Don't stress yourself out." At the time, I had sent back a heart emoji. I had been grateful. That was the part that made betrayal so dangerous. It did not always come dressed like cruelty. Sometimes it came carrying boxes. Sometimes it used your own memories as wrapping paper. "Did she say where she was storing the jewelry?" I asked. "No." "Did she mention any financial trouble?" Mr. Ellison hesitated. "I don't want to speculate. I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm asking what she said." He looked down at the folder. "She said she had a deadline that she needed money by Friday." "For what?" "She did not say." "Friday, that was tomorrow." The word rang in my mind all the way back to Willow Creek. I did not drive straight home. I went to First Federal Bank. The branch manager, Evelyn Harper, had known William and me for over 20 years. She was younger than I was, but not by much, and she had a way of listening that made people say more than they planned to. When I asked about the safe deposit box, she did not look surprised that I knew about it. "Mrs. Clark," she said, "I'm glad you came in." Something in her tone made me sit straighter. "You are the primary box holder," she continued, after Mr. Clark passed. "We sent 2 notices asking whether you wanted to update access. I must have meant to. You did not update it, which means no one else has legal access without you. The relief I felt was immediate and almost embarrassing. Has anyone tried? Evelyn folded her hands on the desk. Your granddaughter came in about 6 weeks ago. She asked whether there was a family box under your name and whether the bank could release property if you were having memory problems. For a second, I could not breathe. What did you tell her? That we could not discuss your accounts or property without your authorization. She said I was having memory problems. She said she was concerned. She asked whether your daughter had power of attorney. I felt anger then, not the loud kind, not the kind that makes a person shout. It was colder than that. Ava had not only taken jewelry, she had been testing doors, seeing which ones might open if she told people I was too old, too confused, too weak to protect what was mine. Evelyn opened the safe deposit paperwork and placed it in front of me. Would you like to access the box today? Yes. The box was smaller than I remembered. We went into the private room, and Evelyn inserted the bank's key while I used mine. The metal door opened with a soft click. Inside was a sealed envelope marked Safe Depos Inventi, William Clark. There was also a small velvet pouch, several copies of our insurance policies, and a note taped neatly to the underside of the lid. Rebecca, Blue Book, page 47. I stared at the note until the letters blurred. Even after all those years, William had found a way to speak plainly when I needed him. At home, I went straight to the workshop. The room had not changed much since he died. His tools still hung in their outlines on the pegboard. The workbench was clean except for a thin layer of dust. In the lower cabinet, behind an old garden almanac and a box of extension cords, I found the blue leather ledger. My hands shook when I opened it. Page 47 contained no numbers. It held a handwritten list titled, Property held for Rebecca Clark, Private Inventi. The list included every piece Ava had taken, the locket, the sapphire brooch, the charm bracelet, William's watch, and 7 more items from the cedar jewelry box. At the bottom of the page was one additional line. If anything on this list is ever missing, check the storage receipts. Do not accept a story in place of a record. I sat in William's workshop until the late afternoon light turned amber against the window. Then I called the storage company Ava had mentioned. A woman named Denise answered. Yes, Mrs. Clark, she said after I gave my name. Your granddaughter called about a unit, but she never rented one. I closed my eyes. Are you sure? I'm sure. She asked about the smallest climate-controlled unit. I sent her a price quote. She said she would call back. Did she? No, Mom. When I ended the call, I looked down at the list of missing jewelry. 12 pieces. Not 1, not 4, 12. I had spent the entire day hoping Ava had made one desperate, terrible mistake. But a person does not make 12 mistakes. And that evening, as I sat alone at my kitchen table with William's blue book open in front of me, my phone lit up with a message from Ava. Grandma, I need to stop by tomorrow. I have something important to talk to you about. A second message appeared before I could reply. Please don't tell Mom yet. She'll make this worse. I looked at the words for a long time. Then I typed only one sentence. Come by at 10. Bring every storage receipt you have. Her reply came almost immediately. What receipts? And that was when I knew she understood that I knew. Ava arrived at 10 minutes past 10. I had spent the hour before she came preparing myself. Not preparing for an argument. I had learned long ago that arguments are where people hide when they do not want to answer questions. I prepared for facts. On the kitchen table, I placed William's blue ledger, the insurance rider, the appraisal request, the storage company's written confirmation, and the photograph Mr. Ellison had taken of my locket. I did not put William's note on the table. That was not evidence for Ava. That was still mine. Laura sat in the living room, out of sight from the front door but close enough to hear. She had come over early, pale and quiet, carrying a legal pad and 2 cups of coffee neither of us touched. Are you sure you want me here? She asked. Yes, I told her. But I want you to let me speak first. She nodded. When the doorbell rang, I took one breath, then opened it. Ava stood on my porch in a black sweatshirt and faded jeans. Her hair was pulled into a messy knot, and she held her phone so tightly in one hand that her knuckles had gone white. She looked tired. Not the tiredness of someone who had been working hard, the tiredness of someone who had been waiting for a lie to collapse. Hi, Grandma, she said. Come in. She stepped into the hallway and glanced at the exposed wall near the bathroom. How's the renovation going? Sit down, Ava. Her eyes moved to the kitchen table, then to Laura in the living room, then back to me. I thought it was just going to be us. It was going to be the truth, I said. That requires witnesses. Ava sat down slowly. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she looked at the blue tissue paper beside the appraisal request. I can explain. You asked me what receipts I meant, I said. Do you have storage receipts? Her face changed. I didn't actually put everything in storage. I know. I was going to. I needed to move things quickly because the workers were coming in and out. The storage company told me you never rented a unit. She swallowed. I was going to rent one, but you did not. No. Then where did my jewelry go? Ava looked down at her hands. Some of it is at my apartment. Where is William's watch? Her head snapped up. For a moment, I saw fear move across her face before she tried to hide it. I didn't take his watch. I slid the appraisal request across the table. She did not touch it. You took it to Mr. Ellison's shop, I said. You identified it as inherited property. You listed yourself as its owner. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I did not take it, she said again, quieter this time. I mean, I did, but I didn't sell it. That is not the question, I asked. She began to cry. It was not loud crying, no dramatic sobbing, just tears running down a face I had kissed when she was a baby, when she had fallen off a bicycle, when she had stood in a cap and gown at her high school graduation. Part of me wanted to go around the table and hold her, but I stayed where I was. Love does not disappear when someone betrays you. It simply has to learn where to stand. I was scared, Ava said. I didn't know what else to do. What were you scared of? She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. At first, it was just the rent. I was behind after my hours got cut. Then I used my credit card for groceries. Then I got behind on that too. Why didn't you tell your mother? She would have judged me. Laura made a small sound from the living room, but she did not interrupt. Your mother would have been upset, I said. That is not the same as judging you. Ava looked at me with anger now. You don't understand. Everybody thinks I'm supposed to have everything figured out. I'm 24, and I'm already behind. Everybody else is getting married, buying houses, having babies. I can barely keep my lights on. I let her words settle. Then I asked, so you took 12 pieces of jewelry from my house? I thought I could sell 1 or 2 things and replace them. You thought you could replace my husband's watch? I wasn't going to sell that, but you took it to an appraiser. I just wanted to know what it was worth. Why? Because I needed money by Friday. The answer came out before she could stop it. I looked at Laura, and she looked as though someone had struck her. Why Friday? I asked. Ava turned away. Because I borrowed money. From whom? No one dangerous. That was not my question. She squeezed her eyes shut. A guy named Trevor. He knew someone who would lend money without checking my credit. I borrowed $3,000. Laura stood up from the living room. Ava. He said it was simple, Ava continued, talking faster now. I just had to pay it back in 30 days. Then he started adding fees. He said if I didn't have the money by Friday, he would tell my landlord I'd been using my apartment for things I wasn't supposed to. What things? Laura asked. Ava looked toward her mother. I let people store packages there for cash. I didn't know what was in them. I needed money. Laura's face crumpled. I had spent years imagining the worst thing that could happen to a family was a loud disaster. A car accident. A sickness. A phone call in the middle of the night. But sometimes the worst thing is quieter. Sometimes it is watching someone you love make one small frightened choice, then another, until they cannot remember where the safe road was. I am sorry you were scared, I told Ava, but you did not come to me scared. You came to me with tissue paper and a promise. I know. You told a bank employee I might have memory problems. Ava went still. Laura stared at her. You did what? She whispered. I only asked a question. Ava said quickly. I didn't say Grandma was confused. I said I was worried about her. Evelyn Harper wrote down what you said, I told her. You asked whether the bank could release property if I was having memory problems. You asked whether your mother had power of attorney. Ava's shoulders dropped. You were looking for a way to get into our safe deposit box, Laura said. I was not going to take anything from the box. You had already taken 12 things from Grandma's jewelry case. I was going to put them back. When? Ava did not answer. I placed one hand over the blue ledger. This is what I need from you, I said. She looked at me. I need every item you still have. I need the names of every person or business you contacted. I need every receipt, message, photo, listing, and payment record. I need you to tell the truth without making me pull it from you one piece at a time. Ava began crying again. I sold the brooch, she said. Laura sat down hard in the chair beside her. To whom? A woman at an estate buying event in Springfield. I used the money for Trevor. I sold the bracelet too. What about the watch? I pawned it. The room went quiet. Where? I asked. A place in Fairmont. I have the ticket. Bring it to me. I don't have enough money to get it back. That is not what I asked. Ava reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled envelope. Inside was a pawn ticket, a handwritten receipt from a buyer named Marjorie Sloan, and a folded piece of paper listing amounts. The pawn ticket showed that William's watch had been loaned against for $400. $400. A number so small beside a life, so large that it made something break open inside me. William had worn that watch for 54 years. He wore it when he walked Laura down the aisle. He wore it when he held Ava in the hospital nursery. He wore it when he drove me to my first day at the library after I returned from maternity leave, and Ava had turned it into $400. I did not raise my voice. I did not say the cruel things that came to my mind. I looked at the ticket and said, "You will give me the name of the person who bought the brooch. You will call the pawn shop while I am sitting here, and after that, we are going to see an attorney." Ava looked up in panic. "Grandma, please, don't call the police. I have not said what I am going to do. You'll ruin my life." "No," I said. "You made choices that may have consequences. Those are not the same thing." Laura reached for Ava's hand, but Ava pulled away. That hurt Laura more than I think Ava understood. The pawn shop still had William's watch. The loan was due to expire that afternoon. Ava had not redeemed it, and the manager said they could hold it until I arrived if I provided the ticket and identification. I went with Laura. Ava stayed at my house because I told her to call the estate buyer, text Trevor that she would not be sending him another dollar until she spoke with legal aid, and gather every piece of jewelry still at her apartment. At the pawn shop, the manager brought William's watch from a locked drawer. It was inside a clear plastic bag with a barcode sticker. Seeing it like that nearly undid me. I paid the amount required to release it, but I asked for a complete copy of the transaction record and Ava's identification information from the ticket. The manager did not object. He said the records would be available if law enforcement or an attorney needed them. When he placed the watch in my hand, I turned it over. The engraving on the back read WC 1968, William Clark. The same letters Ava had typed into Mr. Ellison's appraisal form and then tried to deny belonged to him. I fastened the watch around my wrist, though the band was too wide and heavy for me. For the rest of the day, I wore it anyway. Not as a symbol of what had been taken, as a reminder of what had been returned because I had stopped accepting explanations in place of records. The attorney I met with was named Karen Price. She had helped William and me update our will years earlier, and after I explained the situation, she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she did not tell me what decision to make. That was one reason I trusted her. She explained the choices available to me. I could document the missing property, send a formal demand for the return of what remained, notify the businesses that some items had been sold without my consent, and make a police report if I chose to pursue one. "If you decide not to file a report today," she said, "you can still preserve your evidence. But do not let pressure from family force you into a decision you will regret." "I do not want revenge," I said. "I didn't hear you ask for revenge. I want Ava to understand what she did. Accountability may be the only thing that gives her a chance to understand it." That night, Ava returned with a plastic tote from her apartment. Inside were 7 of my missing pieces. The pearl earrings William bought me after Laura graduated college. My mother's garnet ring, the silver charm from our trip to Lake Erie, a gold chain I had not worn in years but had kept because it reminded me of my father. Ava set each item on the kitchen table as if the weight of them might crush her. "I'm sorry," she said. I looked at the small collection. "You are sorry because you got caught. I'm sorry because I hurt you. Both can be true." She nodded through tears. Karen Price sent a letter to the estate buyer the next morning. Miss Sloan still had the sapphire brooch. She had not yet sold it, and once she received the documentation, she agreed to return it while the matter was being reviewed. The charm bracelet had already been sold to a buyer in another county. It was not recovered immediately. That was important for Ava to hear. Not every loss is fixed by an apology. Some things leave your hands and do not come back, just because you finally understand their value. At Karen's advice, I filed a police report for the missing jewelry and the false ownership claims made during the appraisal process. I did not do it while angry. I did it after I had slept, after I had read the documents, and after I understood that keeping it secret would only teach Ava that family loyalty meant silence. The officer who took my report was respectful. He did not promise a fast outcome. He copied the appraisal request, the pawn record, the storage company confirmation, the insurance inventory, and the photographs. He told me an investigator would review the case. That was enough. The law did not have to move quickly for the truth to begin moving. Ava moved out of her apartment 2 weeks later. Laura helped her find a room with a cousin in Columbus, but she did not pay Ava's debts for her. Instead, she helped her contact a legitimate credit counselor and a legal aid office about Trevor's threats. I agreed to one condition. Ava had to repay what she took, even if it took years, not because I needed the money, because restoration means more than returning what is left. It means learning to carry the cost of the harm you caused. For the first 3 months, Ava was not allowed in my home alone. She did not have a key. She did not handle my mail, my paperwork, my medication, or any part of my finances. When she wanted to see me, she called first. When she came over, Laura or another family member was present. Some people told me that was harsh. They said she was young. They said she was family. They said I should be grateful she had confessed. But Ava had not confessed. Evidence had spoken first, and I had learned that forgiveness without boundaries is not kindness. It is an invitation for the same wound to happen again. Months later, the bathroom renovation was finally finished. The new tile was bright, the walls were clean, and the whole house smelled like fresh paint instead of dust. I stood in the hallway one morning and looked at the place where Ava had once stacked those empty storage bins. There was nothing there now. No boxes. No promises. No reason to pretend I had not seen what I saw. The sapphire brooch had been returned. The pawned watch was back in my drawer. The locket was once again in my hands. I had Mr. Ellison clean it, but I did not let him polish away the tiny scratch by the clasp. That scratch belonged to our life. It was proof that the locket had been held, dropped, found, loved, and carried through time. One Sunday afternoon, I opened it and read William's hidden note again. The locket belongs to you, not because it is gold, but because I bought it for the woman who taught me what home means. For years, I thought home meant the place where I gave people the benefit of the doubt. Now I knew better. Home is the place where truth is allowed to live, and dignity is the lock on the door. If this story reminded you that protecting your independence is not selfish, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs the reminder. And tell me in the comments, should a family member earn back trust through words or through consistent actions over time?